Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. The phrase today we're going to talk about is a far cry. A far cry. And this phrase isn't as bad as it sounds. It's actually quite straightforward. It's an idiom which is used to describe something that has changed in some way. And we use it to create a comparative. It kind of implies that there's some kind of disparity or contrast between two things. For example, the old broken down house she showed me was a far cry from the beautiful mansion she described. Or if you think about a child at school, his performance was good, but it was a far cry from the level of excellence we were expecting. The reality of the situation was a far cry from what he had imagined. So you can hear there a far cry basically means something which was terribly different from what was being expected. Now, it's very common this in English, a far cry. And in one of our newspapers today, they're talking about Tom Cruise because Tom Cruise was at some kind of dinner, a public event last night with Prince William. And the media, the newspapers, they are saying, well, Tom Cruise is a far cry from the man he used to be. Because in this picture, there's him and Prince William together. Well, Tom Cruise is very small, Prince William is very tall, but that's not what they're referring to. They're talking about the fact that Tom Cruise is beginning to age. Now, I have to say that they are right because the boyish looks of Tom Cruise are beginning to fade. He does still have that teenage hairstyle with a little bit of hair curling on his head, but he is definitely beginning to look a little bit older than he was. And not before time, I might say, because he's looked like he's 20 for the last 40 years. So I'm pleased that he's beginning to age a little bit along with the rest of us, particularly around his neck. I can see that he's now getting older, but he still looks very good for his age. So one of our newspapers, they've created a kind of like montage online about Tom Cruise as he was and Tom Cruise now. And they're saying that he's a far cry from the man he was many years ago. Now, speaking of far cry, I did have a look around to try to find you a song with that title. There is one, but it's not the kind of song we would have on this podcast. But I did find another song which doesn't have the words far cry, but it is referring back to some kind of time before and some kind of longing for love. The song is called I Should Have Known Better. I should have known better. And of course, should have is the modal verb plus have, and it's expressing regret or criticism about one's action. And the man is basically saying that, well, his life today is a far cry from the past. It's very interesting. It's referring to a real situation in the past and how it's so different from today. He should have known better. It's reflecting a kind of conditional or hypothetical reasoning about the past using the modal verb should. So Jim Diamond, the singer, who died a few years ago, I think, he's going to take us through his song, I Should Have Known Better. Okay, so there's been many recordings of this, but the verses are all the same, but in different orders. Okay, so Jim begins by telling us, and I should have known better to lie to one as beautiful as you. Yeah, I should have known better to take a chance on ever losing you. But I thought you'd understand. Can you forgive me? Now he's obviously realizing that his life today is a far cry from the past. And then he tells us, I saw you walking by the other day. I know that you saw me. You turned away and I was lost. And then he says, you see, I've never loved no one as much as you. Oh, he's using a double negative there. I've never loved no one. Of course, he should be saying, I've never loved anyone, but it probably just doesn't fit in with his lyrics. So he says, you see, I've never loved no one as much as you. I fooled around, but tell me now just who is hurting who? And then in the chorus, he tells us, I, should have known better. It's a lovely song, and we'll talk about these lyrics just in a second. I'm smiling to myself because I remember when I lived in Spain, you know, quite often in different countries, they hear words which don't exist. We do it in English as well. We hear a song and we somehow or other mistake the lyrics completely. But this song, because of the way this man sings it, and I should have known better, in Spanish, they had something like no soy un bombero, which means I'm not a fireman, which is completely not related to this song whatsoever. And I remember meeting numerous Spanish people who had completely misheard the lyrics of this. It's very funny what they had. But anyway, let's go through it. So, I should have known better is quite clear. So he's saying that he should have had knowledge in the past not to do the bad thing that he did. To lie, to not tell the truth to one as beautiful as you. And then he says, yeah, I should have known better. To take a chance, well, that's to take a risk on ever losing you. But I thought you would understand. And of course, he uses a contraction. I thought you'd understand. Can you forgive me? So this is Jim Diamond telling us that he should have known better. And then Jim tells us, I saw you walking by the other day. So, you know, some people walk by. I'm sure you all know that famous song, Walk On By whoever sang it, I don't remember. I know that you saw me, you turned away, and I was lost. Oh, emotional, isn't he? And then he says, you see, I've never loved no one as much as you. So sometimes when we're talking in English, we just make that reference. You see, you know, it means the same thing. For example, if I say, I'm feeling sad today, you know, you see, it means do you understand, you know. And then Jim uses that double negative. He says, I've never loved no one, which, well, I mean, he shouldn't do that. He should know better. He should have known better than using a double negative. And then he says, I fooled around. So he's basically saying that he's had an affair with another woman. Well, I'm assuming it's a woman. And then he says, but tell me now just who is hurting who. So she's obviously having her moment of revenge. And then he tells us again that he should have known better to lie to one as beautiful as she apparently is. I mean, we don't see her, so I don't know. And then later in the song, he says, It's true, I took her love for granted. For granted means that I didn't really care much about the love. If you take something for granted, it means you don't respect it. It just becomes another thing that you do, for example, that you get used to. And he says, trying to explain where I went wrong, I just don't know. And then he tells us, I cry, but tears don't seem to help me carry on. Yeah, well, they wouldn't, Jim, would they, if you've been with other women? And then he says, now there is no chance you'll come back home. Oh, so she left, did she? Oh, interesting. And then he says, got too much pride. Oh, well, I don't blame her. I mean, if he's been fooling around with other women, of course she's not going to come back. And then he says again, can you forgive me? And then the chorus, ay, 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 should have known better. It's a lovely song. I recommend you listen to it. I'm sure you'll know it. I mean, it's from the 80s. It was a very well-known song at the time. And he's using a modal verb to tell her that he should have known better. So really what he's saying is that his life is a far cry from the way it is now. Very, very different. And he's using the contraction should have rather than saying in full should have. It's an expression of regret or self-reproach. A modal verb phrase used to indicate what would have been the correct or better action to take. So should suggests the obligation that he had in the past. Okay, so should have done something. So he's obviously using the past participle there, and its effects on the present are clearly showing. Yeah, so very interesting, very interesting. Should have known better, and better is the adverb modifying known, indicating a higher degree of knowledge. Oh, very interesting. So it's implying that there was a more appropriate action which could have been taken. And he's probably thinking that because he knows that his life now is a far cry from what it was before. Yeah, and that song came out in 1980. Jim Diamond, I should have known better. So hopefully that explains a little bit more about a far cry. Music was very different in the 1980s. It was a far cry, or maybe I can say it is a far cry from the music we see today. I just don't get music from today. I don't understand it. I don't understand its meaning, its lyrics. I heard Ed Sheeran the other day. And I'm thinking, what? How did we ever get to this point where people can't really express themselves in a real strong way? I hate that. So he didn't last long on my MP3 list. I don't know what it is about music these days. It just doesn't sound the way it used to. People keep telling me to listen to Taylor Swift. I don't know who that is. I'll need to make a point of trying to listen to her. She seems to be very popular. But we'll see. We'll see. And that's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed this. So, a far cry. And I hope you find a place to use this so that you can say that your English is a far cry from the way it used to be. That's it. See you all soon. Take care. Bye.